Alright, what is up guys, and welcome back to another Discord bot video. It has been a while, but we are back, we're ready to go. And just before we get started, I would like to thank everyone for helping me reach 600 subscribers. Yeah, it's been a massive milestone, you know, like 600 subs is actually pretty big for me. So, like, thanks to all the viewers who are watching my videos, liking my videos, disliking my videos, and, you know, doing pretty much all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's try and aim for 700 subscribers is our next milestone. So yeah, make sure you guys like the video, sub to the channel. In this video, we are going to be going through Discord components. So I know we did go through one of the components, and that was buttons right here. But we're going to be diving into more of the Discord components in this video today, because there are a lot more Discord components in Discord. You know, there's drop-down lists. And there's also something called Modals, which is like a form where you can submit it to the bot, and we will be going through how to make modals in this video. So yeah, this video is a lot to do with Discord components. So like, we've already got the like Discord button component. So I've taught you a lot how to make buttons in episode, I think 7, I think it was. So that was like a dedicated video to buttons, and I showed you how to deal with the event handler for buttons. So when you press a button, you have to make the event handler for that button. So if a user pressed the button with the ID that's 1, then we can you know, send a message or do some other task in this very if statement. So if you don't do this event handler, then the button won't work. So in this video, we are going to be going through drop down lists and modals. So I'm going to teach you how they work and pretty much how to implement them in a Discord bot. So let's get started. Okay, so what we're going to do is just make a new class, like just dedicated to Discord components. So, you know, it just makes life a bit more easier, and it just, you know, like it, you know, like it's just like a separate place for Discord component commands. So what we're going to do is name this Discord component commands. So while we're at it, we may as well copy and paste the whole button command into there, because it just makes sense to do that. So we have our button command, and we're just going to, you know, go from there. So that's going to work. So we'll make sure to clean up the using. So now we don't need this, and we need to make sure we register our command in here. So the first component I'm going to teach you guys is the classic drop down list. So this is just the normal string option drop down list. So let's make a new command. So like, you'll see how it works. So this is going to be a drop down list. So I'm just going to name it drop down and then list. So we'll make a public, and then we obviously need our command context. So we don't need any parameters, because we're just going to be sending a message with a drop down list, right? So all right, first of all, let's actually make the message that we want to attach this drop down list to. So let's just make a random embed message. Yeah, so let's make a var drop down message, and that's going to be equal to a message builder, because we are going to be attaching components to it, right? So we have to make it a message builder. So we say new Discord message builder. Cool, and then we add the embed. So new Discord embed builder, and then we just add some, you know, some cool stuff to it. So we say with color. So we'll make it Discord color gold. Screw it, you know, let's actually use some different colors in this video. So with title, we'll just say this embed has a drop down list. So okay, that's all cool, and then we need to add our components to it. So we'll leave that blank for now. So there we go. There's our, you know, normal message, and then we'll obviously send it. So await CTX channel send message async, and then our drop down message. So just like we did for buttons, we are going to declare our drop down list early on, and then just attach it to the actual message, because it's a much more neater process, right? So what we're going to do is make our drop down list component up here. So what we're going to do is say var drop down, and this is going to be equal to a new Discord select component. So the Discord select component is a drop down list pretty much. So if we actually read the description, select menu with multiple options to choose from. So that's the drop down list right there. So what it needs is, if we look at the like the parameters, as you can see, it needs a custom ID just like the button, so that we can access it in code, and then a placeholder, and then it needs some options in the form of an enumerable Discord select component option. So this all seems very confusing right now, but I'll go through it one by one. So first of all, the custom ID. So let's say this is a drop down list. So that's our custom ID that we can use in our event handler over pretty much over here. So that's our custom ID, and then our placeholder, let's just say select and then 3 dots, because you know that's usually what a placeholder is. And then our options. So as you can see, we need a pretty much enumerable list in the Discord select component option format. So let's make that. So what it wants is a list, right? It wants a list of options so that we can pass it into our component over here. So what we're going to do is make a list. So we'll say list, and then it wants, once again, so it wants a list in the Discord select component option format so that we can pass in options to it. So let's say Discord select component option, and as you can see, it represents options for Discord select component, because with a Discord drop down list, we can't just hard code all of our options into the component. We actually have to make a list for it. So there's our list, and then we'll just say new. So we'll name this options. So we'll name this options. So now we can actually start adding our options to it. So what we'll do is add like 3 options to this list. So we'll say options.add, and then we need to add a new Discord select component option. So because it wants it in this format, right? So we'll say new Discord select component option. So let's see what this wants. We need 2 things. It needs the string label and then the value of that label. So it's kind of like fields where you have your label of the string, the title, and then the value that it's actually holding. Well, this is much different. So the label is actually what comes as the option. So when you view your options, the label is actually a string that actually appears on your option, and then the value is actually what that label actually holds. So let's say option 1 as the label, and then this option 1 is going to contain, I don't know, option 1. So we will use this as a custom ID in our event handler to have different outcomes. So if a user picks this option 1 with the custom ID of this option 1, then it will output something that you want, right? So think of this as the label of the option and then the custom ID of that option. So that makes more sense, actually. Yeah. So this is the label of the option, and then this is the actual custom ID of the option that we will be using in the event handler. So that's all cool, pretty much. So we've added that option to our list there. So let's do this 3 more times. So we'll have 3 options, like so. So we'll have option 2, and then option 3, and then we'll rename these 2 and then 3. So that's all cool. We've made our list. We've added our 3 options, but we can't just pass it in because it is still a list, right? And this wants an enumerable in this format. So what we can do is turn this options list into an enumerable variable. We'll rename this to option list. What we can do here is create our actual options variable. So we'll say options is equal to the option list, and then we say as enumerable. So we need to import system.link for this. So what this does is turn our list into an enumerable variable. So as you can see, if we view our options variable, then it's an enumerable in the format Discord select component options. So now we can actually pass this in. So we can pass in our options, and there we go. So now we can just pass it in to our components now. So we can pass in our drop down, and there we go. That's how you make a drop down list in code. So if we actually give this a go, so we'll press start, we'll type in drop down list. So I'll like zoom in a bit so that you lot can see, and there we go. That looks pretty cool, right? So it says this embed has a drop down list on it, and then there's the placeholder. So our placeholder that we set on it. So like this is our placeholder, and as you can see, so, and then if we click on it, then there we go. There's our three options. So we got option 1, option 2, option 3, and if we try and pick one of them, then nothing's going to happen right now because we haven't programmed the event handler to do it. So pretty much, once you've made your your drop down list, you should be at this point where it should fail on purpose because we haven't coded it to do anything. It's the similar process with buttons. So if we press option 2, then nothing should happen because we haven't programmed it. So that's our option, like drop down list. So that's our 50%. Now let's get onto the event handler and program each of these options to do something. Okay, so how do we actually program our different options to actually do something? Well, so we have to be in our component interaction event handler once again. So it's the same as our component interaction created event handler. So we'll just, stay in this event handler once again. So we'll sort of separate this out. So this is our button event handlers. So button events, and then the one above it. So we'll have these for our drop down event handlers. So drop down events. So it just sort of makes it look a bit neater, right? And obviously, like if you have multiple if statements, then you can, change this to a switch statement, which is what I will do probably later on, but I just can't be able to do it right now. But yeah, okay. What we have to do in this event handler is check for our ID of the actual drop down component, and then in that drop down component, we have to check for the ID of our option that we got here. So there's two things that we have to do: check for the drop down ID and then the option ID that we've got here. So first of all, let's check for our drop down ID. So what we do, it's actually not the interaction data custom ID. All we got to do is say if the e.id. That's it. So the e.id is equal to our drop down list. So this is our unique ID, so custom ID, that's our first parameter. So if the e.id is equal to drop down list, then there is our event handler for our drop down list. You can also add a additional if statement saying e.interaction data and then the component type. So you can check for the component type and make sure it is the correct one. And in this case, our drop down is basically a string select. So we say component type and then string select. So this pretty much guarantees that we are checking for the Discord select component drop down list. So what we do in here is we get our options. So we say var options, and that's equal to the e.values. So if we actually look at the e.values, then the values selected only applicable to select menu components. And as you can see, we've got a select component, so that pretty much works. So what we're going to do in here is for each through each of those options, right? So we're going to for each through each of our three options and check if the user picked any of those options. So as we're for eaching through it, we're going to check, has that user clicked on option 1? Has that user clicked on option 2? Has that user clicked on option 3? So what we're going to do is say for each, and then what we're going to say is var option in the options variable as we've got up here. So we're going to for each through them. And instead of using if statements, we're going to use switch statements. So what we're going to do is switch the option. So switch and then option. Like, if you don't know how switch statements work, I heavily advise you to do your research on it, because it's much more better than doing an if statement. So an option right now is a string, as you can see here. So because it's a string, it's actually looking for our value over here, because our value is actually a string, and it also acts as our custom ID, as I've been saying all this time. So let's check for our option 1. So let's say case and then option 1. So think of it, so like if you know how in buttons we're checking for the custom ID of 1 or our fun button, well in here we're checking for the custom ID of this option 1. So in this case, so if the user picked option 1, then what we're going to do is just send a message back to the server. Now for you lot, this can be anything you want. You can program this drop down list to do anything you want, but I'm just going to do the basic thing. I'm just going to get it to send a message back to the server, and then you guys can build on that even further. So what we're going to do is just create a response back to the channel, because bear in mind, this is an interaction after all, so you can't just do send message async. It's still a response that we have to send back to the channel. So we do await, and then E, and then interaction, and then we say create response async, just like we've been doing under here for our buttons. So here we will update the message, because we're you know, like we're just, you know, like we're picking from a drop down list and we just want to execute its functionality. So we do update message, and then we say new Discord interaction response builder with content, and then we'll say as a concatenated string, we'll get the user that executes this command, and we'll say they picked option 1. So we'll say the e dot user, and then the username has selected option 1. So like this will get my username, and it will say this user has selected option 1. So that's cool. And then obviously after a case, we must make sure to break from it. So break. So like that's how switch statements work. So let's do the same thing for option 2. So we say case and then option 2. So make sure it's the exact same name as what you set in the values, not your labels. Like the labels is what appears on your drop down list. The value is actually what that is holding. So make sure you copy these over. So option 2. So we'll just add. So like we'll just add the break on to make it easier, and then we'll do case and then option 3. So we'll break from those as well. So make sure in every case you're using normal colons, and then for the breaks you use semicolons. It's a bit different. So we'll just copy this line over, and then we'll say pick option 2, and then same thing for option 3. So they picked option 3. So that's our event handler for a drop down list. Your approach is just checking for the ID. So there's no interaction data custom ID. That's for buttons. But for a drop down list, you're literally just checking for the ID. That's it. And then if you want to do it, like if you want to be more secure, then you can add on the check for what sort of component type it is. So if it is, so this approach ensures that we're checking for string select drop down. Let's give this a try now. So what we got to do is execute drop down list and then pick one of the 3 options. So we'll press start. Cool, so nothing went wrong. So we'll execute drop down list again. So drop down list. So let's pick option 2 and let's see what happens. So option 2, and there we go. It's gone to the event handler, and it's realized that I've picked option 2, and it's gone to that that switch statement. So I picked option 2 here, so it sent that message. So I have picked option 2. So that's how the normal drop down list works. So hopefully you guys understand that. So all you gotta do is make your message that you're gonna add your drop down list to. You make your drop down component, and then for each option you make a list for each of your options, like so. So your Discord select component option, and then you assign it your different options that you got. And since the component wants it in an IEnumerable format, you have to do this line here. So you've got to turn your list into an IEnumerable by using this method as IEnumerable. So that's how you make a Discord like drop down list. Let's move on to the other types of drop down lists that we can have in Discord. So like the next type of list I'm going to show you is a channel drop down list. So let's create a command for that. So command. So once again, let's make our message for this specific component. So what we're going to do is just copy over this embed. So we'll make sure to indent it properly, and then we'll say this embed has a channel drop down list, and then we'll get rid of our components. So if you want to like know what kind of components there are, you can just say Discord component. And then look how many components there are. There's an action row component, button component, that's the one we've looked at. The channel select component, so that's the one we're going to be looking at now. There's a link button component, mentionable select component, role select. There's the option that I was talking about. Yeah, what we're going to be doing is making a channel drop down list. So let's make that. So we'll say var channel component, and we'll make a Discord channel select component. So once again, we'll open our brackets and let's see what parameters it needs. So it needs a custom ID, a placeholder, and then like the channels are actually automatically loaded from your guild. So it will automatically get the channels in your server. But if you want to pass in those you know, like specific channels, then you can create a list once again and then turn it into an enumerable. So okay, let's just do the basics. So string custom ID and then the placeholder. So the custom ID, let's just say channel drop down list. So let's keep it to the naming standard. So there's our custom ID, and the placeholder, we'll just do the same thing. So select with 3 dots. So like that's all we need. Like you'll see how it works. So channel component. So let's pass that in, and then we'll send the message. So we'll start it up. So we need to execute channel list for this one. So let's see what it looks like. So channel list. So as you can see, this embed has a channel drop down list on it. So if we press select, then watch what happens. There we go. It's got all the channels in my current server right here. So it's got my testing server. It's even got my categories. So my text channels category right here. And it's even got my other, you know, like channels, and it's even got voice channels as well. That's pretty interesting. So it's got all of our channels, and then once again, if you press it, then it's not going to do anything because we haven't programmed it to do anything. So yeah, this interaction failed. So that's what a channel drop down list looks like. So this could be useful. Like you could have a drop down list where users can subscribe to a certain event in a channel. So if they press the photos channel, then they can maybe get a role that allows them access to the photos channel. I don't know. There's like a lot of functionality that you can probably do with channel drop down lists. So once again, let's program our channel list component to do something. So if we go back to our event handler, then it's the same thing. So let's add a else if, and we check for our drop down list ID, and then we check for the different option ID that we've got here. So since we've got channels, it's going to be a bit different, right? Once again, we check for the ID. So our ID in this case is channel drop down list. So we'll copy and paste that over. So if the e.id is equal to the channel drop down list, so what we're going to do in here is get the options once again. So var options is equal to the e.values. So like every time you're making a drop down list, the values of that drop down list is pretty much your options. So make sure you always get them. So once again, we for each through those different options. So we do for each, and then this time we say var channel in options. I guess that makes sense, right? Because each option is a different Discord channel. So what we do here is let's debug through it and let's see what channel actually is. As you can see, it's a string. So let's debug through it and let's see what it's actually doing. So like I want you guys to see what this channel variable actually is. So let's do channel list once again. So channel list, and let's pick the testing channel. So let's see what happens when we pick the testing channel. So it's gone to our event handler here. Let's see what channel actually is. So let's see. It's returned an ID. So it hasn't actually returned the name of the channel. It's returned the ID of that channel as a string format. So what we have to do is actually get the channel using our client, because we can't just, you know, like there's not a lot that we can do with this this string that we've got here at the moment. So what we need to do is use our client to get that channel with that ID, because it's pretty much what it's getting is the ID of each channel. So what we do is say var selected channel, and what we can do, since we're in our program.cs file, is we can use our client to get that channel. So what we can do is say client, and then we say get channel async. Simple as that, right? And since it wants a ulong as the ID, and our channel variable is a string, so what we can do is say ulong and then pass, and then we can pass our channel. Whoops. So I think that's all we need to do. Yeah. So like we ulong pass our channel because it's in a string format, and then we use get channel async to return our channel variable is a Discord channel. So now we can actually send messages to this channel. So once again, this is just the basics, but once again we just do await and then e.interaction new Discord response builder, and we'll just say what channel they picked, right? So we'll say with content, and then we'll say once again like another concatenated string. So we'll say the user picked this channel, I don't know. So we'll say the e.user username selected the channel with name, and then we can pass in this variable over here. So we'll say selected channel dot name. So this will get the name of the channel that we got here from its ID that we got from the for each loop. So let's see what happens when we execute this. So what this should do is when we pick a channel from our drop down list, it should get the ID of that channel, and then it should send a message saying this user picked the channel with the name and then the channel name of what they picked. So let's give that a go. So we'll say channel.list. So channel list, and let's just pick the, I don't know, photos channel. So let's pick photos and let's see what happens. There we go. I picked the channel with name photos. That's cool, right? So once again, this is very basic, but like there's pretty much a lot of functionality that they can do with this. The last type of component I'm going to show you guys is the mention select component, because if you think about it, all of these components are very, very similar in terms of the like the drop down list components. All of them are very similar. They have a custom ID, a placeholder, and they probably require you to put in a enumerable of some type. So let's make the last one, and then I'll show you how to do modals. So let's do our mention list. So we'll say command and then mention list. So this is for mentioning users or roles, right? So we'll say mention list. We'll paste in our drop down message once again. So indent it, and then this time this embed has a mention drop down list on it. So mention drop down list. So okay, let's make that component. So we'll say var mention component, and that's gonna be equal to a new Discord mention select component. So it's the mentionable select component. Yeah. So once again, if you have a look at it, yeah, it's literally the same thing. Custom ID, placeholder, and that's it. So like, they are all very similar. Like pretty much all of them need a custom ID and then the placeholder, and then the rest is probably optional. So let's have a custom ID. So we'll say mention drop down list, and then our placeholder is the same thing. So select ... Cool, and then we'll add it to our component. So mention component, and then we'll send it. Okay, so press start. Let's see what that looks like once again. So we need our mention list command. So mention list, and let's see what that looks like. So this embed has a mention drop down list on it, and as you can see, we can ping multiple users, or well, I mean not ping, but select them, right? So we can select them, or we can pick roles. So as you can see, I've got a few roles here, like admin, normal user. Like these roles are just for the or like these ones are just for the bots, so you can filter them out if you want to. There's ways to do that. But yeah, like I can pick roles or users. So like if I pick myself, then obviously nothing's going to happen because once again I haven't programmed it to do anything. So there we go, it's failed. So that's all cool. So now we can go back to our event handler and program it to do something. So if if we ping a user, like if we pick a user, then let's just say let's just send back a message pinging that user. I don't know. So once again, we're back in our event handler, and we just got to check for the ID once again. So we'll add another else if. So once again, you can change this to a switch statement and just check for each ID. So what you can do is just switch and then e.id, and then like have your different cases for each drop down. So that works. So we do another else if, and then we say e.id is equal to, let's see, mention drop down list. So copy that over. And once again, we get our options by saying var options is equal to the e.values, and then we for each through them once again. So we say for each. So this time it's going to be, I don't know, var user, I guess. So we'll say var user in options, or var mention. I don't know, like you think of whatever you want. So it's going to be very similar to the way we get the channel. So instead of getting like instead of saying get channel async, we just say get user async, right? So we say var selected user, and that equals to await and then clients, and then we say get user async. So once again, this user is a string and it's going to get their ID, obviously. So it's going to get their ID from the options, right? So since this wants a ulong user ID, we ulong pass it once again. So we say ulong and then pass and then our user, because because it's a string but it's got their ID in it. So we want to convert it into a ulong for this parameter. So that's all cool. And let's just send a message back, and we'll just mention them, right? So we'll say await and then interaction create response async. We'll update the message, so update message, and then we say new Discord interaction response builder with content, and then we'll say so another concatenate string. So we'll just say so the selected user, and then we'll get their mention string. So we'll say mention, and then we'll say was mentioned. So it will get the user that was picked from the drop down list, and it will just send a mention, and it will say this user was mentioned. Simple as that, right? So let's start that up and let's see what that does now. So we'll go back. So we'll say mention list, and I'm just going to pick myself. So we'll pick my name, and there we go. As you can see, it got my mention string, and it said my user was mentioned. Simple as that, right? It's quite cool. Like there's many different functionalities for each of these drop down lists. So it's pretty up to you to figure out what you want to do with them. But that's how that's the basics of how to do Discord drop down lists. And honestly, those are most of the Discord components in Discord. So notice how I've been saying drop down lists a lot. So most of it is drop down lists and buttons. That's it. That's all they've got so far. Because once again, if you do Discord component, so if I say Discord component, pretty much all we've got is drop down lists and then buttons. Like there's also like other ones, but like Discord component emoji, but that's not a component in itself. That's for that's for adding to a button as an emoji. But most of it is a drop down list component, or it's just a Discord button component. So that's pretty much Discord component summed up in this video. So the last thing I'm going to go through is Modals, which is technically another kind of Discord component, but it's very different. You'll see how it works. So as you can see, this is what a modal looks like. Like you might have seen it before, but it's basically like a form that they can submit to a bot and have the bot do things. It's pretty much like a form, basically. So like this could be useful for pretty much like a lot of things. Like like modals can be used to store data. for, you know, like different commands maybe. So this YouTube bot right here, it literally has a modal. We can edit your messages when a video uploads. So for example, for this video right here, this format was submitted through a modal. So as you can see, pretty much every video, it's just going to get the link of the video, and then it's going to get the channel that it was uploaded from. And as you can see, it's done it for every single video. So it pretty much uses a modal to pretty much act as a sort of template for what your upload message needs to look like. So modals can be used for that purpose, and it can be used for many other purposes. So what I'm going to do is show you how modals are made. So we'll close that off. So what we're going to do is make this a slash command. So it's much more easier to deal with modals through a slash command. You'll see why. So what we're going to do is make a slash command. So we'll say slash command, and then we'll name it modal. So this will show a modal. Simple as that. And then we'll say public async, and then task, and then we'll say modal. And then we need our interaction context. Cool. So what we're going to do is make our message that contains a modal. So a modal is actually in the format of an interaction response builder. We've been using the Discord interaction response builder all this time, you know, in this format. But what we're going to do is make a new Discord interaction response builder. So what we're going to say is var modal, and we're going to make a new Discord interaction response builder. So we're going to say new Discord interaction response builder. Cool. So what we're going to do in here is add a title. So add title. No, what's it? With title, I meant. So with title, and then we'll just name it test modal. Cool. And a modal needs a custom ID, right? So, you know, like just like any other component that we've got in our, you know, like different components over here, it has a custom ID, right? So, you know, this button has a custom ID. This drop down list has a custom ID over here. This a channel drop down list has a custom ID. So just like those, a modal needs a custom ID as well. So what we're going to do is say with custom ID, and then we'll give it a custom ID. So I'll just say modal. Like this, you know, like this is not the best of custom IDs, but just as an example. So that's our basic modal. So how do we add that text box to it? So where the user can type stuff in it. So what we need to do is add a text box component. So we say add component, and to add a text box component, we say new text input component. So as you can see, a text input field like selects, this can only be used once per action row. So we need a text input component right here. And this is our text box in our modal, pretty much. This specific label needs a custom ID. There we go. It's come up now. Okay, so yeah, string label and then the string custom ID. So let's give it a custom ID of, I don't know, random text box. Cool. And then I think the rest are pretty much custom. Yeah, so we've got a string placeholder. I think we can get rid of this label. Yeah, okay, that works. So I think the placeholder is something that appears for, like, you know, like a starter message. So we'll say type something here. And then like the value can be null, and there's loads of different, you know, like parameters that we can put here. You know, text input style, that's also cool. Min length, max length. So that's all cool, and it's something that you lot can mess around with. So that's our text input component, and we're pretty much done with that. So we've made our Discord interaction response builder. So now we need to actually send it off, right? So notice how I'm not using defer async, and it's for a reason. So we're going to create the response async after we've done this. So we're going to say await, and then ctx, and then what we'll say create response async. So this will still get rid of the error, and you'll see how it works. So this time, instead of sending it as a channel message with source, so watch this, interaction response type. Normally what we've been using is channel message with source or update message to just send the, you know, message off. But there's this option down here saying modal. Well, I think you guys know what that means. It's quite obvious. So we're going to send this response as a modal. So it makes sense, right? So we're going to send this interaction response builder as a modal. So we'll pass in our modal because it is an interaction response builder. after all. So when we execute this command, we should get a nice modal form that we can fill out. So let's give that a start. So start. There we go. So yeah, there's modal. So if we execute this, let's see what happens. So there we go. Look at that. That's pretty sick, right? So we've got a test modal. There's our title, and then there's our random field, and then there's our placeholder. Type something here, and then I can just type in random stuff. So there's our modal, right? It's quite cool. So if I just type in random things and then press submit, what happens? So nothing happens, and as you can see, something went wrong. So just like our other components, our buttons, our drop down lists, we should expect it to fail because we haven't programmed our modal to do anything yet. So this is our modal. It's pretty cool, right? So let's close that off. Let's make our modal just send the input back to the channel when the user presses submit. So that's pretty simple, right? So let's do that. So for our modal, we need a new sort of event handler for this. So we are not going to mess with our component interaction event handler now. So we're done with this for this video. So what we're going to do is make a new event handler. You'll see how it works. So what we're going to do is say client, and then we need the modal submitted event handler. As you can see, modal submitted. And as you can see, this event fires when a modal is submitted. So when the user presses that submit button, this event will fire. That's what you want, right? So that's perfect. So when the user presses submit, we have a dedicated event that fires when that modal is being submitted. So let's make that event. So we'll subscribe to this event, and then we'll press tab to make that event, and then we'll say modal and then we'll name it modal event handler. So modal event handler. Cool. And then we'll now we'll also rename these methods. So message sent event handler, that's fine. Button press response. We've now added drop down list to this, so this method doesn't make sense. So what we'll do is rename it by pressing Ctrl R, and then we'll say interaction event handler. So that will rename it up here. So our component interaction created is now subscribed to the interaction event handler, and all of our methods now make sense. So that's just a sort of naming standard that we have to follow, and it just makes life a lot easier. So we know which method does what. So in our modal event handler over here, what we're going to do is we're going to check for our ID, right? So technically, what we're doing is we're checking if the user pressed the submit button. So what we do is say if e.interaction, and then the type of that interaction is equal to the interaction type, and then we say modal submit. So this is technically the ID of that submit button. So technically we're not checking for the ID of the modal, we're checking if someone actually pressed that submit button. And then in here, just like we've been doing for our drop down list, we're going to get our values. So what we're going to do say, what we're going to say is var values is equal to e.values. So in a modal, the e.values is actually the text that the user is submitted. So the text input component is the value in this case. So that's what the value actually is. We're just going to send the input of that text, this text input component, back to the channel. It's very simple, and it should give you an idea of how modals work. So what we're going to do is say e, and then interaction. So what's it? Await, and then e.interaction, and then create a response async, and then we're going to send it back to the channel where the modal was submitted. So say channel message with source. So channel message with source. So once again, we'll get the user that submitted it. So we'll say the e.interaction, and then the username submitted a modal with the input as the value that they passed in over here. So in this case, it's going to be, let's just get the values, like the first value that they pass in. So we'll say values once again, and then first. because in a modal you can actually have multiple, you know, like components in it, right? So what we're doing is we're pretty much getting the first input of the first component over here, because like in a modal there's multiple components, or you could have multiple components in a modal, right? So we're getting the first component in the modal, and we're just getting the text that they submitted in. So that should make sense to you guys. So like you'll see how it works. So that's that pretty much. So let's start it up, and then if we execute modal once again, so modal, so let's pass in hello as the text. So when I press submit, it should get the user that executed it, and then e.values should contain this input over here. So watch what happens when I press submit. There we go. It's got the user, and it said I submitted a modal with input hello. So there you go. That's how modals work. That's, you know, it's very simple. So, you know, we'll execute it again, and I can just type in some random text, press submit, and there we go. It said I submitted a modal with the input, and then it just got the input. And yeah, pretty much that's how modals work, guys. So overall, hopefully you guys learned how Discord components work. There's lots of different components that you can mess around with: buttons, Discord drop-down lists. There's the like the channel drop-down list, like I've been saying. And also, hopefully you guys know how a modal works. So you create your interaction response builder, send it as a modal response type, and then in your modal submitted event handler, you pretty much check if the user pressed the submit button, and then send anything you want, or do anything you want, because bear in mind, modals can be used for different purposes, like I showed you at the beginning. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. That was Discord components and modals. If you have any questions, then obviously leave a comment below, or join my Discord server and ask questions there. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Once again, let's try and aim for 700 subscribers as the next milestone. So yeah, I'll see you lot in the next video. Peace out.